And we're live. Welcome, welcome. Thanks everyone for joining me today. I'm Debra Eckerling. I'm author of Your Goal Guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals, and founder of the Deb Method. And I'm so excited because today I get to talk about creativity with my new friend, Stephanie Storey. And Stephanie is a historical art fiction writer. Mm-hmm. Did I get it right?
Yes.
Awesome. And I love that. I mean, you've got this like ridiculous background, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself in a second. But before we do that, so today on Goal Chat Live, we're talking about creativity. We had an awesome Goal Chat conversation on Twitter last night. I think now, and my theme for October has been survival skills. So we did loneliness, we did joy, we did, there's another one in there that I am completely blanking on, forgive me. But now we're talking about creativity. And it's how else do you survive now? I mean, this whole isolation is an exercise in creativity. Am I right?
It's so true.
And today, so we're talking to Stephanie Storey about creativity, and I love your books, I love your art background, and it's going to be an awesome conversation. And why don't you introduce yourself better than I just did? Please, welcome.
Oh, please. I loved it. I loved the ramble about trying to be creative during the pandemic and how do you survive. And I also have to say, it doesn't matter how many of these things you do, right? So my first novel up here, it's probably backwards to you guys, Oil Marble, came out in 2016. So I've been traveling around the world doing events for Oil Marble. And I'm a trained actor. I do all this stuff. It doesn't matter how many times I do it. When the words, "this broadcast is now live," come up, my heart goes, oh, hi, we're live. I just had to jump in with that. Okay, so I'm an art historical novel. My two books are over my shoulder, sort of. They're probably backwards. Oil and Marble, which is about Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, their rivalry, and Raphael, Painter in Rome, which is about Raphael's rivalry with Michelangelo. I'm a little Michelangelo obsessed. So these two have been out in the last 5 years or so. Before that, I was a television producer out in Hollywood it's now almost been 20 years. I got my first job out there in 2000. So about 20 years now. I've worked as a television producer. And before that, I was an art history major and painter in college, sort of a joint degree. And then I went to go get my PhD in this stuff in art history. But I dropped out because academics don't like it when you make stuff up. So I went to go get my MFA in creative writing instead and wrote novels. I've been writing since I was 7 years old. So all I've ever wanted to be was an author since I was a little kid. And so I just moved to Hollywood to do the TV producing thing until my real dream came true, which is the novels. And I'm in the same boat as everybody else of trying to figure out how to do this artistic, creative thing in the middle of a global pandemic. So I appreciate all the things you've been talking about this month.
And the one that I missed was like the most important one is we talked about endurance, because we have coming up in November is National Novel Writing Month, mm-hmm. National Nonfiction Writing Month, podcast post month, blog posting month, everything posting month, which is great because I'm all about the win and mm-hmm. the challenge in November to I've been posting a win a day in October because I think that it's just so helpful when you're living in weird to be like, I did this. And I'll admit, some mm-hmm. days I'm like, what was my win? And one day I survived the week. Sometimes that's your best win.
Sometimes that's all you can do is just survive. Sometimes right. I saw another writer who was doing that. He may have gotten it from you. I don't know. He was trying to post one win a day. And on 2 days of his week, his win was I survived.
Oh, see, I'm only allowed to use that one once. I actually tried to make it different because yesterday or the day before, I wanted to put chicken soup, but I knew that was a previous. You got to have, and I guess making chicken soup in and of itself is pretty telling. What's your win? I made chicken soup. Okay, you needed chicken soup. You survived. It's all the logic. And one of the things that came up in Gold Chat last night was why, and that's the first question, is why is creativity important? And without creativity, how could we have survived the last 7 months? I mean, we've all had to get creative about the way in which we do things. It fulfills your mind and your soul. And by the way, I'm not artistic at all. I mean, I express that way, but stick figures. But creativity is just, it keeps you happy and excited and revitalizes you. But then people are saying, yeah, but I survived because we had to change things up. Everybody's had to learn. If you weren't creative already, you got a crash course starting in March.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, I also think beyond just you have to be creative in order to survive at this moment. For me, there are a couple things of why I feel like I have to continue actually creating art, not just being creative in like my cooking and being creative in my home life and being creative in conversations with family. Like, yes, you have to be creative in all of those things. But a couple of the reasons why I feel like I have to continue being creative and why it's really important is because as we do move through this period, people who are artists have a responsibility to absorb the moment and then express it so that other people who are stuck in that capacity, and so many people are stuck in that capacity, so many people because of anxiety and boredom and losing jobs and not being able to pay the rent and freaking out about everything, political, social, local, personal, everything, don't have the capacity to absorb the outside world and then to express it outward so that other people can understand it and express themselves. It's the reason why we're all sitting around like Netflix and we're all reading more and we're all watching more movies and we're all doing that. It's because we're dying for somebody else to absorb this moment and to express it outward so that we can have that feeling too. So that's really important to me. I feel like it's our responsibility as people who have the capacity to intake the external world and then express it in some way. It's our responsibility to do that. The other reason why is when this is all over, it's going to be our job to help the world figure out what the freak we all lived through. I mean, right? We're going to be processing this moment for the next several years. This isn't just going to be this moment or this week or next week. It's going to take a long time. And you know how I'm going to process it? I'm going to process it by reading other people's books. And I'm going to process it by watching other people's movies and by writing my own. But as artists, it's your responsibility to do that. It's not just why is it important. It's why you have to hold yourself accountable if you are that kind of person. That's my like soapbox for the moment.
I love that. And the reason I love that, I told you we're like totally like friends who never met until like now, is whenever I hear of somebody, or whether it's a client or a friend, someone who is sharing their story, their trauma that they lived through, and the fact that they're able to share it, I mean, they get like tons of gold stars for that, because so many people have trauma, but not everybody can express it. And the ones who can express it and can share it so other people feel like they're not alone. I mean, that to me is remarkable.
That's right. That's our job as artists. That's why I watch movies. That's why I read books. It's so that I can feel exactly what you said. Like, I am not alone. Like, my experience living through this crazy pandemic moment is not just me going crazy in my own head. It's the same as other people are experiencing it. Other people are as anxious and bored and freaked out and worried about what the future is going to look like as I am. And that helps all of us. I know whenever I read something where I go, oh, I'm not the only person. You know, back in the past, there were plagues and there were military sieges and other people went through this kind of stuff too. It makes me feel better because I'm like, oh, thank goodness I'm not the only human to ever feel.
And what is the meme that keeps going around? Our ancestors fought wars. We have to sit and watch television. We can do this.
Well, yes, I think that's true. But for some reason that frustrated my creative button, because I thought,
Okay, tell me.
because for a lot of people, and a lot of people I know, I mean, I've worked in the entertainment industry for 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those people, a lot of particularly actors and really the creative people in LA, they live paycheck to paycheck, and they hold down a restaurant job in order to keep that job. And so it wasn't about sitting around and watching television. It was about moving out of their apartment in LA because they got kicked out, and having to move back home to Minnesota and give up on their entire dream and give up on their entire identity. So it didn't feel like, for me, having so many people working in a creative field or having so many people working on Broadway, where it wasn't like, well, wait, I got to continue doing my job from home on Zoom. It was losing all of that and not being able to feed themselves and not being able to feed their kids and not being able to pay their mortgage. So it was bigger than that for so many of the people that I watched living through it, that it did feel more like an old time. I keep comparing it to a military siege, as though a whole city has been shut down and you feel like something is coming and attacking you and you feel legitimately in danger. My parents are in their mid to late 70s, and they're not the healthiest people on the planet. So I worry about them, as I think we all do. It's like there are these big health issues that come into play. And I've certainly known people who've had COVID and suffered. So that particular thing, for some reason, always like stifled my creativity until I like got out of it and went, no, there is something legitimate happening with this moment that's going to continue paying off for the next, for the next year to 5 years, that we're all going to be dealing with. It is a bigger thing than just having to sit at home and watch Netflix. As much as, oh my gosh, yes, that's part of it. And the boredom is absolutely part of it. Everybody's freaking bored.
Are you bored? I haven't been bored. I have not been blessed with boredom. And I'm happy, because I've been bored before. Once, gosh, this was ages ago, somebody said to me once, one day I said, oh my goodness, I'm so bored. I never want to be bored again. And he said, I said it out loud, and I haven't been bored since. So the levity, it's so important. And I'm in LA, and I probably should, and I do understand, because I know plenty of people in the similar situations, the actors and the musicians and the people on Broadway. Absolutely. But then I'm like ever the optimist. You'll learn this about me. There's been so much opportunity because you have to do this. I mean, this show came because my publisher said, hey, Deb, do you want to take your Twitter chat on Facebook Live? And it had been something that I'd been thinking about, but didn't pull the trigger on until, my office, my space is, okay. So for me, and my book came out in January, and by March, everybody was settled in. But my book is all about the goals. And I'm also all about okay, what's your win? What sort of thing can you do to feel good while we're waiting out to see where everything lands? So it's the balance. And yes, you have to have the panic times, but you also have to have the Deb times, optimistic. So you really, I don't want to sound like I'm downplaying trauma, because I totally get it. And for a lot of people, it's taken months to be able to say, okay, things aren't changing. What can I do? And I'm going to bring back to creativity. Sometimes you have to get a little bit creative when you reboot, rebrand, refigure out yourself. And we're just in this big mess, but now why I put creativity in with all the other survival school themes of the month, because it, at this point kind of is, right? So yeah. I want to know, before we get on to the next question, you've had such a loop-de-loop road. You have. What has kept you on your path? Are you just, it's going to be there, you've just always kept moving forward, or what was that for you?
To me, it doesn't feel loop-de-loop, right? Because I wanted to be a novelist since I was 7. I end up getting my undergraduate degree in art history, which is just storytelling in a visual form. It's not anything other than that. I go trying to get my PhD in it and decide I'm not going to do that. And I moved to go creative writing, which again, it all feels like the same to me. It all feels like storytelling, one slightly more visual and one slightly more language, but it's all the same. And then I get to graduate school, and everybody's told me since I was a kid, you can't make a living as a novelist. So that's just what I heard over and over. You're going to have to find a real job. And so the way to find a real job as a storyteller, the business, was Hollywood. So I moved out to Hollywood to tell stories because they paid and because I could get a gig doing it. So that didn't feel different or out of place. And I ended up using it so much because I was a talk television producer primarily. So it was my job to do research of the guests who were coming on our shows. So all of the, the biggest actors and writers and filmmakers and thinkers and artists of our day, I've had to do research on and write questions on and prepare for interviews and then prep them for the interview and all that stuff. So I've dealt with the best and brightest in our current culture. And so now I'm just applying it back to the old guys who had the same thing happening. They were just masters in their day, just like I've dealt with the masters in our day. So I never felt like it was as crazy as maybe it sounds on the surface. It all felt very forward moving. So I don't know. I just figured it just took me a while to get a novel published, but I was always out telling stories in some capacity or another in my career. Somebody talked about the day job, and I get it, but I've never really felt like I had one because I was producing TV while I was waiting to get, I was working on finishing the novel. So I always felt like, well, I'm telling stories in some capacity, so that's where I am.
Oh, it seems to me like you've just lived your mission. I'm all about the mission and the motto. You've always known what you wanted, and you've just found a way to do that every step of the way. And we're talking, it reminded me, when I was applying to colleges, I got into a creative writing program. I ended up going the journalism route, but it's really funny if you think about the two different paths, because when I too, 7, 8 years old, started making up stories. And I went the nonfiction rather than the fiction route. So whenever I get throwbacks to creative writing, I'm like, oh, I gotta do that. It gets me a little wistful, which is a wonderful transition into the next question, which is, how do you express your creativity?
How do I express? I don't know. That's a hard question. You're throwing me under the bus. No, I'm kidding. Most of my expression is of the thing that I love to do, that I've always wanted to do, is write novels. And I've always wanted to write historical novels, in part because I love taking old, real stories and then crafting them into something that relates to our life today, right now. I mean, that's what I did on talk shows too, right? I took a celebrity's backstory and then crafted it into a story for a 12 or 30 minute segment or a 2-minute segment, whatever it was. And so all of that, so I do that. But the other thing that I do that has been such a help during the pandemic, right? Talk about using creativity to keep yourself freaking sane during all of this. I've studied acting for the last eight years or so, which has been this great expression of taking the outside world and sort of pulling it into yourself and then expressing it outwards. And during the pandemic, my studio back in North Hollywood has moved to online. And so I can actually, because I'm not sheltering in place in LA. So my husband and I have been traveling around the country for about 4 years when the pandemic hit. So I would always say we lived out of your local Marriott. Obviously could not do that during the COVID-19. So, so we are sheltering in place in my parents' guest house by a lake in Arkansas.
Why not?
And what?
Why not? It works.
Right? It's lovely. There's a lake out there. It's ours. We don't have to live out of a Marriott. That's fantastic. But it's meant that I can keep taking classes at my home studio in North Hollywood where I can get together on Zoom and actually interact with people and take in other people's junk and crap from the pandemic and then use it in a performance in some capacity. And so that's been really helpful to find something. Maybe it's because it's outside of my job, my creative job, which at this point is noveling.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes when you get so in your head about, well, the next thing has to pay the bills, you get like freaked out. Whereas acting doesn't have to pay the bills. You know,
acting's fun.
Just fun and just my own expression. And I think that there's something to that for everybody, regardless of what your job is, to find something that's more hobbyish, maybe, because it's just there's no pressure on it, right?
Right. Well, in one of my things, I've got a ton of them, but one of them is that you should always be doing things that bring you joy. And if your job doesn't bring you joy, find a hobby or a side hustle or something else that brings you joy. Maybe it can develop into something else, or maybe it's just joy and it makes you happy and better able to approach the other things that you do. So
I just also want to add, even my job brings me enormous joy. It's all I've wanted to do since I was 7 years old. I love sitting down and writing a novel. Are you kidding? It's like my favorite freaking thing to do. But you can't, if you do it all the time, you start to go a little like your novel gets really weird. You gotta take a break. And so I'm saying, even if you love your job, do exactly what you're talking about. It's not just if you don't like your job. It's even if you love it. Find that expression, that external other thing, you know?
Yes, I completely agree. And especially, I live in the land of multiple projects at various stages of development, which is a lot I learned back when I lived in Chicago. I moved here over 20 years ago. Wow. I feel like I've only lived in LA. So whenever I think about how long I've lived here, it's kind of bizarre. Wait, I live somewhere else? Anyway, but I went through a screenwriting phase. And this is really what happened. I took a screenwriting class in Chicago, and I had also started my first writer support group, goal setting, what are you working on, what are you going to accomplish? And I literally got my freelance writing break a week after I finished my first draft of my first screenplay. And the nonfictions always come more naturally to me, so that's kind of the path I went on. But I will always remember the screenwriting class is where I learned the line, I have multiple projects at various stages of development.
That's right. That's right. That's the best way to be, because you never know. And certainly when you're working in Hollywood or in any creative field, really, you don't know which project is going to work when. And that's part of the beauty. That's part of the beauty of being, I think, an artist, is because you're not quite sure which thing you're going to be dedicated to full time next. You're not quite sure which thing is going to really pop and work and pay the bills, you know?
Yes. And do you remember a time, I don't know if you experienced this, about 10 years ago, when you went to mixers, you were supposed to, you introduced yourself as one thing, even if you were like 3 or 4 or 5, just like, this is no?
I do remember it. I just always have to say I just found it ridiculous. I just didn't do it, but I absolutely remember it.
Well, it was
ignored the advice.
Well, it was really funny because I was out because I worked day jobs until about 7, 8, 10 years ago with a break in there when I also freelanced. So I haven't worked a day job since 2007, but I had a 1.5-year day job in there somewhere. Anyway, I remember my last corporate, the last place I didn't tell people I was also a writer. One day, one of my bosses came in and said, "Oh, I picked up a Venice magazine at dinner the other day, and I saw Debra Eckerling wrote this article. Did you know there was someone else by your name who's a writer?" I said, "Nope, that's me," and he didn't believe me.
Did that like horrify you? That I would have been like, oh my, I have to redo my life. Oh my gosh.
Well, ever since then, it's one of my mom's favorite phrases are, there are no secrets. And I stopped trying to keep my identities separate. From that moment on, I'm like, yep, I'm Deb. I'm the freelancer. I'm the goal group leader. I am and now, of course,
oh, good.
That is at least for the last 10 years, I've been all of myself and then some. But what I was going to say was, those years ago, if you were more than one thing, it confused people. Now, if you're not more than one thing, it confuses people.
Oh yeah, now you have to. I've always told people to do it. I've always told people, no, tell him you're an actor and a producer and a whatever. I don't care. Tell him. It doesn't matter. Now I agree with you. Now if you're not doing it, there's a problem with you. Like, you have to be 8 things.
Yes. What is wrong? And it's not just if you're a creative. Yeah. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got 3 or 4 or 5 different projects, and you always have, I always say you should always have at least an alpha and a beta, 2 things, so you're always moving forward on something that you're passionate about. But tell me, and I know it's kind of a funny question to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So how does being creative make you feel? I mean, I know the answer, but answer it anyway.
Well, you know why it's a funny question? I don't know what being creative feels like. I just am who I am.
It's like natural. Yeah, it's the whole of the you. Right?
So I don't know. I mean, I guess where I can tap into a feeling. I can't really tap. I don't know. It feels great to write a book. It's all I've ever wanted to do. It's all I ever do. It's all I do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It feels like being me. But I can tap into what the feeling feels like when I think about if I have a really good scene in acting class, which again feels a little bit more like external for me because it's not my whole life. It feels great. It's like through the roof. You're like, I am awesome. I achieved something I didn't know I could achieve. I felt something I didn't know I could feel. I made other people in that class cry. I am good. Like, it makes you feel, maybe it's powerful. Maybe it's you have not just good, but you have impact. You have the potential to have impact. And isn't that such an important part of how we live? Is not just to impact yourself, but to find a way to use your creativity to impact others, to impact the world we live in. Because it can be a really hard place out there. So if we can give people joy or sadness or catharsis or love or anger or anything, then aren't we doing our job? Or we teach people something, you know? Or we give other people inspiration to do what they want to do. There it is.
Educate, inform, inspire, entertain. That's it, right?
Inform,
inspire.
Yes, I think those are the 4. There's something else in there that I would add, which is to make people feel something. Because I don't know if that's entertainment always, because I'm not always entertained whenever I feel angry when I read something or when I cry because I see something sad. I don't know that I'm being informed, or I don't know, but there's something about when you make another human being feel something in that moment, that's a gift somehow. Or maybe that's just my obsession right now, Deb. I don't know.
No, I like that. I put it in my comment. See, this is why we create, though, right?
Yep.
I think it got them all, but it would be, the writer in me is like educate, inform, inspire, entertain, and then feel. You can't just leave that like hang out. I think it deserves its own phrase. So I think that's why we create, right?
I hope so. I guess, I don't know. We do it because we have to. I was just reading a book about ballet, and there was a ballet choreographer, I wish I could remember his name, who said, I don't want dancers who want to dance. I want dancers who need to dance. And I think that applies to every art form, right? I don't want the writers who want to write. I want the writers who like need to write or they're like gonna die. Like, those are the writers I want to read, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I had someone come into my writers group, and it was at the Barnes & Noble in Santa Monica. You lived in LA, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And someone came in and he said, I hate writing. I want to make a lot of money. And I think a couple people laughed at him, and we never saw him again because because the group was really all about we do this because it is in our blood and in our bones. And I've always felt it like the way in which I've expressed myself through writing has changed, but I always feel like I was born a writer. And people who are born an artist, and some people who are born a creative of some way, shape, or form were stifled, whether it's art, writing, music, whatever. And I love those, and it's happy and sad when you hear those stories about someone who didn't discover their gift till later because they were stifled. So you're happy that they got to express it, but then it's like, but it took you so long to get there. But I think it's the get there, right?
Yeah. Because I started to say, I mean, part of me can get sort of regretful or sad that it took me until I was 40 to publish my first book, right? Because it's a long journey and you think, oh my gosh, I know what I would want to do since I was 7 because everybody told me it was only a hobby. I wrote privately for, 20 years and I never would have considered really publishing because I didn't think it was a real gig. And sometimes I can get a little bit like regretful about that or something. And then sometimes I go, yeah, except for the fact that I am the writer I am because of the journey I went on, because of the getting there. I've had the moments that I've had, and I've gotten to put the books out that I wanted to precisely because I've had more time. Because I produced, this is just one small example, because I produced 5 nights a week of television for 15 years. Every day we churned out a new show, right? Just every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. I don't churn out books, and other people do, and there's nothing wrong with it, and that's for them. But I take my own sweet freaking time. Like, they take me years to write. And I'm thrilled with that. And if I'd done it at 20, maybe that wouldn't have been my choice. So this is just for people at home who feel like, I've waited too long. It's too late. I can't do it. I missed. Don't feel that way. Just keep doing it. Keep putting it out there, because when you actually get there, that's the right moment. Is that too corny?
No, it's totally it. It's the things that make you
yeah,
are who you are when you get to the you that you want to be that best expresses yourself. See, now I'm talking in circles, but it's the thing. And I am in, and I start this out in my book. I say, what is Goaltopia? This is the word I made up. What is the perfect place where you're living the life you want, achieving your goals? And if you're having trouble figuring it out, think back to what you loved when you were a kid.
Yeah.
What was that thing that got you excited? Whether it is, and I use cooking all the time because I never loved to cook until like 3 years ago. And now I love to cook. And I think, thank goodness I learned to love to cook pre-pandemic, or else I'd really be in trouble. It's my creative expression, and there's food. So it's win-win. But were you the entrepreneur creating things when you were a kid, or the inventor, and then you were told, no, that's not a job? Well, you're grown up, you got extra time now. What is that thing? And how can you bring it into your life today? Even if it doesn't have to be your whole life, but start with that spark. Remembering what you loved that got you going. So now I'm corny.
That's my kind of people. I love it.
Okay, so what advice do you have for people who say they're not creative, or they want to be more creative, or they're just like, I want to be creative, but I'm not? Well, I don't think it's true. I don't think you think it's true either, because everybody's got some. But what do you say to them?
I probably give the really age-old advice that's been told way too many times, which is button share or whatever you're going to do. I was just reading a quote the other day. And again, I wish I could remember that people who give me these great quotes, I really got to start writing down their names. I'm an idiot. Okay. That the faucet can't start to run until you turn it on. So you're waiting. It's like, I know so many people talk about writer's block all the time, right? Like, oh, well, I have writer's block. You can't really write. Well, I know the feeling of feeling like you're going to write something terrible. But I kick it off my shoulder and I don't listen to it. So I've never actually, quote unquote, suffered from writer's block, because I really feel so strongly that if you want to be creative, great, sit down and do something. I don't care if it's putting glitter on a piece of paper, like whatever it is, or if it's just putting iPod in your ears and dancing for an hour to your favorite song. That's creative. That's creating your own movement. That's expressing yourself in some manner. So just if that's what you want. Now, if you're like, I'm not creative and I don't want to be, then don't. I mean, you'll have to. I'm not holding you to that. I'm just saying, if you're like, oh my gosh, I really wish I was creative as you, then sit down and morning pages. We all know, we all know the artist way. Sit down and write your 2 morning pages in the morning when you wake up. If you don't sit down, you don't start writing, it's not going to come. That's when it comes. It comes down when you start, and it doesn't come before. And there's no bolt of lightning that goes, oh, boom, you're creative now. Oh, boom, you've been inspired. Go create something. Guys, it doesn't happen. I mean, maybe it happens like 10 times in your life where you're out doing something and you're like, oh, I have to go home and I have the whole thing in my head. That's very rare. Don't wait for that. And I think if you wait for that, by the way, it's not going to come anyway. It only comes because you've been sitting down and turning on the faucet every day. Then when you're out doing something else, then it can come. But whatever it is, I don't care if it's decorating your house or making holiday ornaments for somebody or I don't care, do whatever it is, or just reading a scene out loud to your friends. Get on Instagram and do your own story. Or sorry, we're on Facebook. Get on Facebook and do your own live presentation story where you just talk to yourself and talk. That's creative. It's all creative. To your earlier point, everything we do when we adapt and we move forward, that's all being creative. So embrace that about yourself. Maybe that's what I wanted to say.
Well, the root of creative is create. That's right. And that's all you're saying is create. Find your platform if it's social. Find your medium if it's a fine art. Find your medium if it's a performing art. And it doesn't matter. And also to your point, I don't think anybody is watching this. Let's see how many quadruple negatives I could put in one sentence. No one is going to be watching this if they're not thinking about creativity.
That's right. And if you're thinking about it, you want to do it. So just
you totally do.
Trust me, I know. Producing 5 nights a week of television and having a spouse and having a life and it's impossible, right? You don't have time. You don't have time to breathe or sleep. But somehow, when you're driving in the car, you still have time. I'm a novelist, so do not think I'm that insane. I still have time to sit down while I'm driving in the car on the commute and put my character through therapy, right? I still have time to sit my character in the passenger chair, and I get to be the therapist for the next hour because I lived in LA, so that's how long the commute was. I still have the creative time to do that whenever it is. When I'm standing in line at the grocery store, I play weird acting games. I go to the grocery store as my characters. I dress up as Leonardo da Vinci and I go shopping. And he's very amazed by all of the things we have. Michelangelo, yeah. Michelangelo is really grumpy when he goes to the grocery store, by the way. He doesn't like the people. He doesn't like that he has to do it. He's very mad he's not working. Leonardo's fascinated by everything. So you don't have to have, people may call you crazy, but you don't have to have time in the world to sit down in a private office and create your work like anybody freaking has that. Do it when you're at the grocery store. Do it when you're driving in the car. Do it when you're in the shower. Just do it in your own head. That's the beauty of it. You're walking around with this thing.
I have this vision of you in LA in the carpool lane talking to your imaginary friend and getting pulled over and explaining to the police officer that no, you are not alone. You have Leonardo with you.
Michelangelo's sitting right next to me, buddy.
Well, this is usually the point in the conversation where I say, let's give a bonus goal to everybody. And I think you kind of just said it, go do something. Right? Go create something. That's your bonus goal, right?
Yeah, go whatever your thing is. And it just go create something, go dream about something. Daydream. That's a form of creativity, by the way. If you are just daydreaming about your life or somebody else's life or some imaginary life, guess what? That's creating something. I'm just going to give you a bunch of weird things I do, since you seem so shocked by me going to the grocery store as Leonardo da Vinci.
It was not a shock. It was it's A, so LA, and B, so cool.
I also take those bad online personality tests as my characters. That's a great way to learn them. You learn what you know and what you don't know. Like, what kind of Disney princess is Michelangelo, right? So you take the test, is Michelangelo, and you find out. It's great. I love them. Although I'm convinced, like every writer, my Safari thinks I'm some weird human being because I'm taking all these personality tests as different people. But it's great. It's great. You know what you know, and then you figure, instead of just doing what religion am I and how old am I and what education level were my parents, find out what kind of food or which part of Los Angeles your character would ideally live in. Take all those stupid online personality tests.
I'm gonna start doing that.
Fun.
The creative project that's been haunting me that I so want to do. I think rather than stressing myself out about actually writing it, I think this is my bonus goal, is to start just play with the characters, because the characters are great, but I haven't figured out what, and I've got, part of the story, and then never got back to the story because, multiple projects at various stages of development. Mm-hmm. But it's a really good way to work through something. So I love that so much. And then they're going to tell me what they're going to do. And then it's going to be a story. So then they're
going to start walking around talking to you. They won't shut up. They'll be like, wait, but I want to take that test. That one that just popped up on Facebook. Can I take that one? You'll be like, sure. and then they start rambling, and then they don't stop. And then you start writing. That's how it works.
Well, and it's also like with me, because I write nonfiction, I blog, I do motivational and do your goals stuff. Mm-hmm. And like everybody else, and when I have downtime, I rarely use it to write the fun stuff. Yes, this is an admission. It's on video, and I will admit it. But if I have a break, I'm making my pretzel rolls. I'm cooking something. But now I'm going to start cooking as these characters, because this will shock you, and it won't. There is obviously a food theme to the thing that I'm writing that I never get to write. So this is like perfect. I feel like I'm in creativity therapy. So thank you.
I love it.
Okay. Yes.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, my screen keeps going dark because I was not planning on being on my cell phone today for this, as Deb can say. We had a little technical glitch. It's all fine. And so I keep lighting up my computer screen because it's my only light on my face right now. So I'm just telling you, if you've noticed my screen, and then I go, ooh, and then the light pops back on, it's because my screensaver on my laptop keeps going off, people. This is how you do online events. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, you get creative because right? And we had, when I did the endurance goal chat live a couple weeks ago, my guest, Eddie Louise, was also having trouble getting on StreamYard and got on it from her phone, which is why I knew, or how I knew to tell you. And then my awesome fellow Mango author, Nita Sweeney, we were talking about NaNoWriMo, and I called her like at 4:05 because I couldn't get on. Could you join today? And she said, when? I'm like, now? Okay, give me 5 minutes. And they both actually ended up at the same time. And we had this great conversation, but it was all about the endurance and adapting and they were like sew each other's people too. So it was that like bonus of it. So it's when you're looking at your life and things suck. I'm going to be optimistic for a second. Just bear with me.
Good. Love it.
Life sucks. Say, you know what can I do today that would make me feel like my life doesn't suck? Usually that's going to be something creative. And even if it's for a little bit of time, I'm a fan of 15-minute increments because just about everybody can find 15 minutes at some point to do something that makes them happy or refills them. Just take your 15-minute creative time, do something that's going to make you feel good, and then later when you're slogging, you can remember what you were doing earlier and be like, oh, that was awesome. When I finished this, I could do more of that.
Yes, right? But also don't put pressure on yourself. Oh my gosh, for 15 minutes I have to be creative. Like that's what I see a lot of my friends doing. They're like, oh, I have 15 minutes. I'm supposed to be creative. I have to create something. Or just daydream. Or take a personality test. Or cook something. Or dance. Or meditate. And I'm sure that's what you mean. I just know a lot of people who hear, oh, I'm supposed to be creative for 15 minutes. No, you're not. Stretch for 15 minutes. Or dance. Or sing poorly while no one's home. Or well while no one's home. I don't know. Maybe you sing. So I'm just saying, I just heard a couple of my friends in my head react to you going, oh, I have to be creative for 15 minutes because it's going to fill me up. Just
no,
do
you have to do something. Yeah. No, we're sitting here agreeing with each other.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree.
I agree that we're agreeing with each other. I've got a rule for that too, though. I have something I call the 5 of 7 rule, which is that you're not supposed to do the thing you love every day. It's like 5 of 7 means 5 of 7 days or 4 or 3 because you're not putting pressure. Yeah. What do you mean, do I? It's a rule.
It's not for me. I've written every day since I was 7 years old, including my wedding day.
Okay, for everybody but you.
I love it. And I can't fathom. I would die. I mean, it's not good. It's not usable. It's not like a rating. I mean, sometimes it's a paragraph of something, but I've written fiction. I'll clarify. So not like a grocery list or I've written fiction every day of my life since I was 7. Something.
That's amazing. No, I'm talking.
It fills me up.
But this is not for you. This rule does not apply to you. This rule applies to all these people who are freaking out, thinking I'm going to be creative every day. I agree. Don't. I always say you can think about your projects every day. And if all you do is think about your project, it's cheating. Spend a little time each week doing, not just thinking, but you make the rules. You decide what's going to work for you and do more of that.
I totally agree that a lot of people take that write every day thing so seriously, and they put like pressure on themselves, like, oh my gosh, if I miss a day, I'm not really a writer. So I totally agree with that. I just don't do it.
But it's what works for you.
Yeah.
Right? And I think being creative, back to the theme, is all about exploring new things, see what you like, see what works for you, do more of what works for you, and less or none of what doesn't.
Right? Yeah, if it doesn't work for you, stop. Don't. Just stop. Just don't do it. And if it's making you depressed there are jobs we have to do, and there's laundry we have to do, and we have to put food on our table, and we have to do stuff that we don't want to do. But if overall you can't find a moment during the day to do something that doesn't make you miserable, then why are we here? We got to do something. Gives us some joy.
I think we're playing with the double negatives again. At least find a few minutes when you're not miserable does not.
I don't think that should be like a theme song. I don't think, But I think that's right. I mean, I think find a few minutes a day when you're not miserable is right, but I don't think it's a motto for anyone.
Yeah, so let's go. And last week was joy, so let's just use that word. In last week's bonus goal was to wake up and do something first thing in the morning that makes you feel joy. And it's really interesting because I think I got up the next day and I'm like, I really want to make those. I'm obsessed with pretzel rolls in my air fryer, and I woke up and I'm like, if I don't look at my phone for 20 minutes and I get up and put the dough together so it can do its thing while I'm working, and then later I get to make it into food, that will bring me joy. And wouldn't you know, that was like my best day that week, was the day that I got up and did that.
Of course. The best days my week are the days when I wake up before the alarm and I actually get out of bed and I stretch and I listen to music and I meditate, even if it's just for like 10 minutes. Those days are, it doesn't mean that I do it. I still lay in bed and wait for the alarm to go off. Even though I know in my head, I'm going, I will have a better day if I get up. I'm like, yeah, but bed is warm and I'm not leaving. But on the days when I do it, oh, they're such good days.
Okay, so to recap, you're awesome.
I so enjoyed this. This was great. I can get together and talk about creativity all the time.
Well, we will. Well, now that you and I are friends, we'll have to like do this and not let everybody watch. But
there you go.
For them. But okay, so to recap, you're awesome. Bonus goal is to daydream. The extra bonus goal is to create something. And that if you don't want to do either of those things, which would be kind of silly if you didn't, but if you don't, just do something for you that brings you joy that you can carry on to the rest of your day.
That's right. Because when you're joyful, you spread a little bit of it around the world. And that's what we all want to do, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Tell everybody where they can find you, and then I will let you give a last piece of advice. So you can think about the last piece of advice while you're telling people where to find you.
Okay. StephanieStorey.com, which is my website, which is where you can find information about both of my books. You can buy those wherever you buy the books. But I have to say one thing. The Kindle's fun because I spent so long of Raphael putting in links to all of the artwork as you come to it. So if you go to the Kindle, you can click on the artwork as you read about it. So you actually get to see the artwork. So that's just fun. So StephanieStorey.com, where I do sometimes put up some writing advice about stuff. I do sometimes post like recommended books on how to write. I post some classes that I teach on how to write. I love doing this stuff. I love inspiring other writers and other artists to do what they do and to just express themselves and to make the art they want to make and to follow the dreams they want to follow. So it's important to me. So yeah, go tool around my website. Another piece of advice, I've got like 80,000 things going through my head. That's the hard part. Oh, but I know what I'm going to say. So there's this epidemic, I feel like, in the writing world, in the art world, whatever, that you really have to pay attention to your market, right? Like you have to know what the market wants. And and so many people think about it. So many people, when they're creating something, they think about, well, what's my reader going to want? And what does the market want? And how am I going to sell it? And blah, blah, blah. Stop. Please stop thinking about the market. Please stop worrying about it, because by the time you write for it, it will have changed. Please write what you want to write and what you're passionate about. Because like if you're going to write a novel's really hard. Guys, it takes a lot of time. It needs so much care. It's enormous. So you got to do something you're really passionate about. If you're going to put on a show, you got to really be passionate about it to be able to get up in the morning and put it all together and get all the pieces together and put all the money and the time and effort into it. Really love what you're doing. Write not so much for the market. I just hear that a lot these days. I don't know if it's partially because we're sitting at home looking at our screen so much and social media. We all feel like we have to we all feel like we have to please everybody else so much because we're going to post about it on social. Write what you love, work on what you love, create what you genuinely love. And I guarantee there's a little bit of magic that comes out in those words, even though you don't intend it, that capture. I'm back.
You're back.
I think.
No, you're here, but that was
Okay.
like a really good punctuation.
Okay.
It was like, and that is my final word.
I hear
No,
you, unfortunately. So I'm going to like wave at you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining today. This has been amazing, amazing. I'm Debra Eckerling. If you want to learn more about me, go to thedebmethod.com. And if you go to thedebmethod.com/blog, you will see the recaps of this in my previous episodes. And if you want to learn more about my book, you can go to yourgoalguidebook.com or your favorite bookstore. It'll help you, figure out what you want and how to get it. In the meantime, this has been Goal Chat Live on creativity, and it has been so much fun chatting about this. Please let us know what you are doing for yourself, how you are being creative, what you are doing to bring joy and creativity and fun into whatever's going on in your world. And join me for Goal Chat every Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific and Goal Chat Live on Mondays. And just have a great, creative, fun week. And Stephanie, thank you again for coming to play and chat with me today.
Thank you. I just unplugged my headphones and now I can hear you again. I don't know. Technology. Just own it. Whatever. It all works. Thank you so much for having me. I so enjoyed it.
I did as well. Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a wonderful creative day. Remember, you can do it.